Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K Collector, and we just got word that the Video Game History Foundation is going to be opening up its archives to the general public starting January 30th. And this means that the general public is going to have access to all of its digital archives regarding video game history. Now, this includes over 1,500 uh, publications like video game magazines, promotional materials, things like that. A lot of that readable content is going to be available to the general public starting the 30th. Unfortunately, due to the copyright laws from the DMCA, they still are not going to be able to open up a digital library of video games for you to play, but you can access their physical titles. So I'm not sure where their headquarters are. I'm not sure where they're located. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research to see where that is. But they are going to make their digital library available to the public for you to be able to do your research. And then again, from a physical standpoint, you'll be able to play their physical copies. And this, I think, is one, it's exciting for anyone who is interested in learning more about the history of video games. I feel like video games are still fairly new. Video games probably what they started in the 70s, 80s. So they're still somewhat new in terms of just history in general. So, but I do believe that when we go to an all digital gaming future, once we get there, there will be interest in these physical forms of media when it comes to video games. And I think people will want to learn more about these physical games. It is unfortunate that, publishing companies are not allowing the Video Game History Foundation to allow researchers to have access to these games digitally. It is tough, but this just goes to show why physical is still important, I think. Because even though the copyright laws prohibit them from allowing researchers or really just the general public to have access to their games digitally, there's little that, the authorities can do to stop them from allowing the general public to have access to their physical video games. And, a lot of times, when it comes to the argument between digital and physical, you hear, well, you don't own anything, you don't own your games. And I've even heard the argument where people will say, well, when you own a physical game, you don't own the game anyway, you just own the license to use that game. Well, I think I would much rather a physical license than a digital license, because at least with the physical license, you have more control. There's little that, the copyright authorities can do to go in and stop, the Video Game History Foundation from allowing someone like you or me to go in and play their physical games. And this may not seem that important right now because we're at the very top end of, this whole movement. We're still able to access physical games in a large scale. Yes, they're becoming more expensive. Yes, they're harder to get to. Yes, a lot of people are moving away from physical games because of the price and because of, hardware issues and not wanting to store consoles and not wanting to have, walls of games. But right now, it seems like the Video Game History Foundation, outside of like the one or two folks who are probably amassing their own private libraries, it seems the Video Game History Foundation is really the only public entity that's trying to make retro games or older video games available to the general public for free without having to be charged an arm and a leg. And, I'm not a researcher of video games. I'm not nowhere near that. But this could be something that we see in the future. This could be a class that maybe my kids take in the future. Maybe they take a physical media course once physical media truly becomes phased out, because these games are going to be a part of our history. And I think it's just pretty cool to see. Now, I know that there is a video game museum. um, I've heard of like a video game museum. You guys can let me know down in the comments if you've heard of that. But I believe that there is a video game museum. I can't remember what state it's in. But usually things like that are for profit. I'm sure that as time goes on, you'll probably see more of these video game museums pop up, because if companies aren't allowing individuals to give digital access to these games and you can only access them physically, well, I could see more entities popping up. Unlike the Video Game History Foundation, I could see more entities pop up that give the general public the ability to access and play some of these physical games, but at a charge, right? And at a cost. And we've seen this with places like, I just mentioned this in a video the other day, how here in New York, we have a place called Barcade, which is a little bit different, right? Because, it's an arcade slash bar, and arcades have always been pay for play in the general public. But who knows? There could be places where, you have these entire home console setups, and just a setup of various different home consoles where people can have the opportunity to go in and have like that vintage couch co-op experience playing video games in a controlled environment. It's not too far fetched to see something like this happen. And as a matter of fact, with a lot of these GameStops closing down, I'm seeing a lot of videos where people are just picking up free kiosks. Kiosks, I could see kiosks being a thing. You having a place where you have a wide range of just various kiosks, Nintendo kiosks, Genesis kiosks, GameCube kiosks, where people can go in and have the home console experience. And maybe you pay, I don't know, $20 for 30 minutes, or $20 for an hour of just unlimited couch co-op play. It's not too far-fetched to see these types of venues popping up in the future, especially because in an all digital and remote future, it could be one of those places that actually brings people together and gives people that old school feeling, like I said, of couch co-op play. I mean, we've seen the rise in a lot of these like activity type places, places like axe throwing, and what's the room, escape rooms. I've seen, I work for a corporation and we've used a lot of these places for team building activities. Well, guess what? I could definitely see corporations using like a retro, you know, uh, the retro experience, using a place like that where you bring teams or groups of people together and they can get this kind of, like I said, this in-house home console experience. So this is very interesting. The Video Game History Foundation is definitely blazing a trail by doing this, by giving access to all of these publications, and then also making it free for individuals to come and play their physical titles. As physical games become more scarce, I'm sure we'll see an evolution in how we utilize the remaining physical games that we have available, in terms of retro games. But let me know what you think about this. I think this is very interesting, the fact that they're doing this, and I'm interested to know your thoughts. But that does it for me for this morning. It's the Y2K Collector. Hope you're having a good weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.